When we are first introduced to Pasquale Parisi, also commonly known as Patsy, he comes over from Uncle Junior's crew after the death of his brother Philly, who was also known as Spoons. Patsy Parisi is Tony Soprano's accountant, and throughout the series, we can often see him crunching numbers in the back room of the Bada Bing or Satriale's. Outside of being Tony's accountant, he also manages to get Tony and whoever luxury coats and suits, is seen throughout the series as an intimidation factor, and is one of Tony's most loyal members throughout the series. But as the series continued, we don't really know much information about the character of Patsy. This is the truth about the quiet character of Patsy Parisi. If you enjoy these videos, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content. Patsy has two sons in Patrick and Jason, as Patrick pursues a career in law and later has a relationship with Tony's daughter Meadow, while the other son, Jason, is the complete opposite of Patrick, as he follows in his father's footsteps in being the next generation of the DeMeo crew and is actively involved in sports gambling. While Patsy's first appearance in the show is the last episode of Season 2, Funhouse, his rise to the top of the DeMeo crew began in the very first episode of the third season, Mr. Ruggiero's Neighborhood, as Patsy's brother Philly was murdered by Gigi Sestone. Spoons was murdered because it was discovered that he was gossiping about Tony seeing a shrink, and the idea of Tony wanting his mother to get whacked. After discovering this information, Tony had him whacked by one of Junior's own members of his crew in Gigi. This was to cause less suspicion about the hit, as Gigi, just like Patsy, came over from Junior's crew after the death of Spoons, as Patsy was brought over by Tony because Tony wanted to keep an eye on Patsy. While Patsy doesn't necessarily know for sure who whacked his brother and why, he certainly does develop a hunch and has an idea of who exactly had it out for his brother, as he develops this hunch during this episode, as the lunch scene between Gigi and Patsy becomes intense, as Patsy talks about his deceased brother at the table, all while Gigi stares him down. The death of Spoons was something that hit Patsy incredibly hard, as in this episode we see just how much the death of his brother weighs on him. As also in this lunch scene, he talks about suicide in front of the guys, and later on in this episode he drowns his pain in alcohol, as we watch him stumble into the Soprano family backyard and considered killing Tony over the death of his brother. After reconsidering, Patsy only decides to urinate in the pool. As the episode continued, we would watch Patsy put this grief behind him, but specifically when Tony forces him to do so, as Tony interrogates Patsy in the back room of Satriale's. Here, we watch Tony force Patsy to say that he's put his grief behind him, as he forces Patsy to move on with his life. This scene is so tense, sad, and yet shocking all at the same time, as we watch Tony assert his dominance towards the newcomer in Patsy. Throughout the series, Patsy would maintain a low profile, as many fans believe to view Patsy as a sort of dark horse character, as we never come to find out any information about Patsy's background. And throughout the series, he works his way up all the way up to captain despite maintaining a low profile. However, despite his low profile, just like all the other mafioso characters throughout the series, Patsy too faced his fair share of adversity. We first see this when the captain of his crew in Polly was in jail, as Tony appointed high-riser Christopher Moltisanti to acting boss, despite Patsy having seniority. This was the result of Patsy developing a conflict with Christopher, as the two could constantly be seen fighting over the construction site, fiber optic cable, and floor tiles. And it's during this scene where we can see the violent side of Patsy as he decides to attack a construction worker. Another scene where we see the violent side of Patsy come through is when he shows up to intimidate Gloria Trillo. While we will never know for certain if Patsy's harsh words were the result of Gloria ending her own life, there's no denying that they certainly played a factor in it, as Gloria took her own life shortly after this. As the series continued, we saw Patsy's status rise, with his intimidation skills, his loyalty to Tony, and not really causing any drama throughout his tenure. It's no question why Patsy slowly but surely rose up within the ranks of the DeMeo crew. as we saw Patsy handle Angie Bumpensaro's money on the street, helped Paulie intimidate Jason Barone over the decision to sell Barone's sanitation, tried to shake down a coffee shop with Bert Gervaisi, and helped organize the feast of Saint Elzir. However, his rise to the top was unlike any of the other mafiosos that we have seen before, as Patsy rose to the top because of all the murders that took place around him, which in hindsight is very common, and something all mobsters experience. As Patsy bounced around between crews, Patsy saw the deaths of Ralph Cifaretto, Vito Spatafore, Eugene Pontecorvo, Gigi Sestone, Christopher Moltisanti, and Bobby Buccalieri. He also watches Furio disappear and Silvio slip into a coma. Not to mention, he also watches the betrayal of Carlo Gervasi. As towards the end of the series, it's uncertain whether Patsy was appointed captain of Tony's crew because of all the deaths in the family that took place during the war with New York, or if it was the fact that he was going to be Tony Soprano's brother-in-law. However, when we look at the final scene with Patsy in The Sopranos, we can clearly see the bitterness and smug look that rest on the face of Patsy, as many fans and critics alike believe it was Patsy who had it out for Tony in the final episode, as Patsy here would get the final laugh and the ultimate revenge. A revenge he had been seeking since the 3rd season for Tony Soprano killing his brother Spoons. What are your thoughts about the character of Patsy Parisi, and the potential of him planning the death of Tony Soprano? Let me know down in the comment section below. For more Sopranos content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.